I'm going to show you 3 common mistakes made with Derwent Inktense and how to solve them. The 3 mistakes I'm covering today are overloading, visible lines, and not letting things dry. I'll show you how to fix these mistakes, and then I'll show you what it looks like when you get these things right. Derwent Inktense pencils are like watercolour pencils. In fact, they are watercolour pencils really. But they're a very special kind that acts like ink and dries permanent. They're really fun to use, and I've been using them for years now in various different styles, you can see. I've put a whole lot of hours into practicing and experimenting with Derwent Inktense and making all of these mistakes so you don't have to. Now let's get right into these 3 mistakes and how to avoid them. Mistake number 1, overloading. This problem usually stems from the idea that we need to colour in our drawings of the pencils. You want to use them like colouring pencils in a colouring book. And that's okay, it's only natural, and colouring in is pretty fun. But look what happens when I add water to my beautifully coloured drawing. It's just really blocky, it's really kind of ugly. And it's really easy to just go, oh well, I hate this and I hate Derwent Inktense pencils, they're just too intense. In fact, this is one of the biggest criticisms of the pencils. People use them this way and then they get upset about how bad they look on the page. I'll show you the best way to avoid this in a minute, but first, here's mistake number 2, visible lines. Okay, so say you know enough not to go overboard with your colour and you've really nicely layered down some colour and you're pretty sure it's going to look great once you've added water. But then you get all of these streaks. Like, look at all of these streaks and pencil lines and you can't get rid of them. It's really frustrating, but I'm going to show you how to fix this in just a moment. But first, let's look at the final mistake I'm going to cover in this video. Mistake number 3 is not letting things dry. It's actually a fairly sophisticated mistake, because by this point in your understanding of the medium, you're not usually oversaturating, and you're thinking about layering colour and trying hard not to make a mess. I've laid down a lovely base coat on my painting here, but look what happens when I try to paint the next colour on too soon. This blurring is particularly depressing, and it's really hard to fix. And it happens whether I draw the line straight on with the pencil or try to put it on with a brush like this. Remember, Inktense dries permanent, so I've probably totally messed up this drawing now and will need to start again. It's even worse here in this example. I've got a yellow background in this box and I want to add some green around the edges. But look what happens if I draw straight on when the yellow hasn't dried yet. Even if I add the colour from elsewhere, look what happens when I try to draw a leaf onto my yellow background. Now I bet you're ready for some answers and we're really close now, but before I show you how to prevent these 3 mistakes, I just want to let you know that I've got a whole course on Derwent Inktense pencils over at naturejournalingcircle.com. There's 8 lessons, including 4 practical tutorial exercises with templates, reference photos and all you need to start using Derwent Inktense right away. I also teach Derwent Inktense in my live lessons for the Nature Journaling Circle membership. So if you're interested in painting natural subjects in particular, come and take a look. There's a link for 10% off in the description below. So back to the video, how are we going to solve these 3 Derwent Inktense problems? We need to think about 2 things here, pigment control and water control. Mistake number 1, overloading, is all about pigment control. When you add Inktense to your painting, you're adding a source of colour. The water will then be used to activate and move that colour around. If there's too much colour on the painting, like there was over here, there's nowhere to move all of the excess pigment, there's nowhere for it to go. So I'm laying the colour on much more gently this time. You can even lay the colour onto another piece of paper and move it over if you want to. This is the kind of technique that I use for all my botanical work when I'm doing Derwent Inktense. This is also a good time to look at mistake number 2, visible lines. So look how smooth I've gotten this background layer. That's because firstly, I didn't press too hard when laying the pigment down this time. And secondly, I've got a bit of a brush method that I'll share with you now. Use a round-tipped brush, not a square or a flat-tipped brush. And use a circular motion with your damp brush. Do make sure that your brush is damp and not like soaking wet. And see how it's catching the pigment here, even with this heavily textured paper. Make sure you're gentle with the brush, never scrubbing. Work methodically over the area, but try to avoid coming back to any areas again, because the paint might have dried before you hit it again, and any areas that have dried fully will dry permanent, so it will give you a hard line and it might double up on the colour, so it stops it from being this lovely level single colour. You'll need to let it dry between layers if you want to cover an area again. So I need to do this whole area in one go. By doing this steadily and carefully, I can eliminate these visible marks. Now, mistake number 3 is not letting things dry. Remember the mess I made before? I'm not going to let that happen again. So this time I'm going to go for a walk while I let the paint dry. I'm back, the paint's dry, and it's time to go over the next layer. Using Derwent Inktense well is all about patience and planning, and it is especially about practice. I'm going to do this a few more times, paint a few more layers, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Here it is, my snail shell painted without any of these big 3 Inktense mistakes covered in the video. What do you think? And which of these Inktense mistakes have you made? Tell me about it in the comments, and if you've got some other ones, let me know. I might make a video about that next time. Thanks for watching, and remember to go and check out my Inktense course and live classes, and sign up to my mailing list for discount codes and some free stuff. If you want to see more Inktense videos, I've left some on the screen for you. I really hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you next time.